Hey guys, Disaster Area here. Now it's been a little while since I've done an ADV related video, but I had an idea for this one for discussing the power of light screen, which is a move that I'm a big fan of. It's a move in my toolbox that I use a lot as an ADV player, but most players don't. They hardly ever touch it and they don't really know what to do with it. So in this video, I sort of want to explain like how I use it, how that compares to sort of how it was most traditionally used, and then like how you can use it and explore it and so on. I'd say it's an area where there's a lot of room for experimentation. Not every Pokemon I'm putting on these graphics is going to be well. I'm putting good Pokemon on the graphics, good users of these moves and so on. But there's other options beyond what I'm including here as well that I think are pretty interesting to explore, and I will get into them into a bit of detail later on. So the first thing is like, how was it used traditionally in the first place? Was typically screens were used to support some sort of setup sweeper, like think something fast, frail, very strong, and if you give it an extra turn of setup, it can do something devastating, like a Rayquaza, a Garchomp, that sort of Pokemon, like these not quite, or maybe even like glass cannons with powerful boosting moves, really strong stabs, all of that sort of thing. And the single turn you'd get from light screen, like I don't know, set up by like maybe Pokemon like sets it up and then explodes, sort of then to set up a sweep. That's a traditional way of using light screen. It's fallen out of favor a lot in, I wouldn't say even like recent years, but it's not really been a popular strategy since I started playing Pokemon. But there have been uses of it throughout sort of the history of the game. I think it was sort of probably its peak was probably during when Gen 4 was current, I would guess. Um, Maybe around that time, as you had good green Zabute setters like Azelf, um, and then like fast, dangerous Pokemon like Salamence that might appreciate it. But I'm talking a bit out of my ass there. I wasn't there for it, and I don't think it's ever been a massively popular strategy. Um, to sort of get into like the way I use it though, I think the first thing to do is to get you to think about how screens are best used, just in general, almost without thinking about like anything specific to do with like in battle or whatever. It's about getting a lot of benefit out of a few turns when your Pokemon aren't taking that much damage. So what that means is you need to secure some sort of long-term advantage off of using the move. And that really gets into how I like to use it in ADV. In this video, I'm going to touch on ADV OU primarily, but I will discuss ADV 50 at the end, which is a separate metagame that I created a few years ago. And it's got some different tools. It lacks certain tools that OU has, and the viability of light screen in that tier becomes a bit more. It's certainly less in that tier because of it, but I'll get into it anyway when I get there. But for those normal people who are just like, I just want to hear about OU, I got you covered. You can just sort of like close the video, hit like and subscribe, sort of once it gets to ADV 50, and that's all. That's all I need. But yeah, in ADV OU, the way I use it, it tends to be in terms of like permanent advantages. You want to either be thinking about field effects like spikes or trapping, either using it to trap something or against trapping something. Um, so first thing then is like, what's a good setter, and then what's a good abuser, and I'm sort of going to go into both sides into a bit of detail. But generally, the way I use it, I tend to like using light screen on quite defensively inclined Pokemon. So as you see on the prompt, I've got Zapdos and Celebi, which are the two Pokemon I use it with the most because they have so many entry points in the game. They can use the move pretty freely without like a big drawback. They force out quite a few Pokemon and stuff like that. So in terms of setters, I'm quite fond of those, and it makes even more sense when you sort of see the Pokemon that I tend to pair it with as well, because I use light screen in a more defensive manner for the most part, to either like to remove a threat or to protect my Pokemon. And when you see sort of how I'm using that, sort of understand why. So if I bring up the light screen of users here, beautiful scene transition. I made two graphics, two whole graphics. um, and well, as let's go piece by piece. So Fortress and Magneton sort of fall into the same boat. Light screen protects both of them from their nemesis Magneton, which can one-hit KO both of them, although in neither case completely reliably. And with light screen up, then you can turn that matchup on its head to some degree. With Fortress, you can carry Earthquake, so then if Magneton tries to come in, it'll do like 50% with HP Fire. You Earthquake, they're gone, and Fortress doesn't have a Magneton problem anymore. For Skarmory, unless you run HP Ground Skarm, which in this sort of case I'd probably recommend just use Fortress. I would say with Skarm, just you want to use like a Spadef Skarm typically, or maybe even Fizdef is a possibility, just like the Spikes Protox Raw set or something like that. But you could try other moves like Drill Peck. I'm sure there's room for experimentation there. But with Skarm, I think it's more about keeping Skarm alive because it has defensive utility that's like can be really crucial beyond just setting a spike. Sets a spike, gets magged, and then it's gone. And then all of a sudden, like your opponent's Metagross is just like that much more dangerous, or their DD-Mance or whatever. And even if you're not pairing it with a Dugtrio, they still get to keep the mountain around. It gets trapped again later. You've probably still gotten like an extra use out of it defensively. You've held off a threat for another turn, and that can be pretty big. Since running a Spiker does cut into your ability to just fit defensive tools on your team. So that's how I'd use it with Skarmory. So obviously there, the benefit of light screen there that you're getting is you're getting up your spikes and you're getting something extra out of your Spiker, protecting them from trapping to some degree. I'll go into it more with like the ADV 50 section. But in ADVOU, I feel like the use of light screen is mostly with and against trapping, even when you're using spikers. It's like, well, I get to spike up and then I get to keep these Pokemon for their defensive uses as well, is where you're going with that. But in ADV 50, there's no trappers. So how you can get a benefit of light screen there is a bit different. But in the way that might apply to OU, for example, is say you've got light screen up, you got Fortress in, you're facing Tyranitar on the other side of the team, and you think it's like a pursuit set with Fire Blast or something like that. If you're like healthy enough, it does give you the option to go for a spike and not be O-code. You might take like 60 or whatever because Tyranitar's pretty bloody strong still, even behind the screen. But it can give you more places to set up as well. Like all of a sudden, like Fortress can spike up on Zapdos a lot more freely if you've got a light screen up. Like then, like what is a Zapdos Thunderbolt when you're behind the light screen for a Fortress? It's just not a big deal. But yeah, in OU primarily, I'd think about trapping because it gives you the ability to rely on your Spiker more to get more out of them. And there can be other benefits, team building wise, play wise, down the line because of that. Because then you can use your Fortress to dominate a Skarmag team a lot more reliably, stuff like that. But yeah, talking about it with and against trappers though is a bit of a different deal. I've not used it as much in this way, but to some degree, I do use it, and you'll see this. I'm going to show some sample teams a little later on and show you sort of how I've put these ideas into pretty decent teams. Obviously, you might not like that style of team. You might say, oh, there's that flaw, that's Pokemon. But for the sake of showing how you use it, I'm sure these should be pretty good examples. So for Gengar first, the most obvious thing is not a Pokemon that is trapping, but it's a Pokemon that is trapped by Pursuit Tyranitar and to a lesser degree other Pursuiters like Umbreon, which I think doesn't get the usage or love that it deserves still, even though I think I've shown how great it can be. But But yeah, that's besides the point. Besides the point, the point really is, say you've got a Spadef Gengar, then with the light screen up, then you can stay in and take a crunch if you want to, or if you pursue, they're not doing that much damage. It'll be 50%, which is a whole lot less than leaving you with just enough HP to come in and not die to sand. Um, and it can make a difference there. And like, if Tyranitar has to try and pursuit trap you more than once, and you've got added up spikes, you've got the damage Gengar does, you might have whisked it or burned it or roared it in with a Skarmory or who knows what. It gives you a lot more capacity to use Gengar without it getting trapped, which is it's pretty good. Gengar's a pretty good Pokemon. If you can keep it around and do more damage with it, what's the problem? That's kind of all there is with Gengar, but because it fits so naturally with Spikers, you can use a structure of like, here's a Light Screamer, Light Scream. Oh my god, I can't fucking speak. A Light Screener with with a Gengar and a Spiker. And yeah, it's a pretty good core to start off with. It's not like they're bad Pokemon in the first place, but you've just got an extra layer to it as well that really can like push that style of team over the edge a bit more, give it a bit more to play with. Dugtrio is a bit different, and I've not built a team where I've just gone Light Screen to support Dugtrio. But maybe somebody out there can try it. I don't know. But some Pokemon like Celebi or Jirachi, on some sets they EV so that Dugtrio can't trap them effectively. You HP bug Celebi, you do 80%. That's very nice. KOs you back with HP Grass. It'd be nice if you just got rid of the Celebi, wouldn't it? So yeah, you can Light Screen up and like it gives you the capacity, even off like a Calm Mind boost, to still try and trap a Jirachi. Obviously, sort of the roles may vary depending on like Jirachi's EVs, how bulky your Dugtrio is. If it's like the bulkless set, still get some benefits from Light Screen, but maybe there's more if you're running a bulky Dug. It's something for you to play around with in the calc, but that's the idea, is trapping these special threats more effectively with less risk. Just pushing Dugtrio just that little bit further. And that's the main ideas of using Light Screen in OU and how it works. As next section, I'm just going to talk about some less explored ways of using Light Screen, but still in the same vein. So one thing is just there are other setters out there. The ones I've experimented with most was primarily Milotic, since you can run Recover, Self-Toxic, and you do have a free slot. I've just not been happy with any of the structures I've come up with so far, but it feels like an idea that has some merit. I mean, a bulky Water with Light Screen and then a Spiker and then maybe a Gengar, something like that. Maybe try it out on like some Milo doll kind of thing. I don't know. But it's an idea with potential for sure. Even if it's hard to sort of get like the right configuration. Another thing that I've been toying with a little bit lately, and I've thought of before in the past, is on Metagross, which is a bit funny, but it's actually, the more I've thought about it, the more I'm like, it's actually not that bad. Not that bad. Where I've been running it is on like the traditional bulky Metagross, where you run Wiggy and Mash, EQ Protect, and then like Toxic in the old days before Refresh became such a force. Even though it's died out a bit, it's still, people don't really like to run Toxic there. And Explosion, of course, is like the other move that goes there. But you can try Light Screen in that last slot. And there's some interesting upsides, I'm not going to lie. In a battle I had with Fredazi, I ended up having Metagross with Light Screen. I Light Screened as he brings in a defensive Starmie. Then I go to a Pursuit Tyranitar, trap the defensive Starmie behind a Light Screen, which you just can't do that without a screen. That's just not kosher. It's not going to work. But, just the only thing Tyranitar needs in that matchup is some more special bulk, so it's not getting run over by Surf. And that's a situation that, defensive Starmie is not too common, so it's not like a huge deal that it can do that, but it's a possibility, and you can run that. The structure I was sort of thinking about was like Hariyama to knock off alongside Pursuitar, Fortress, Metagross, and then like two others. The team was off per week, so I'm not keeping it. But that was like the four I was thinking of like building with on that particular team. And there was some upsides in some cases to light screen with Pursuitar as well. Um, yeah, I mean that kind of works as well. Just in general, if you've got like Zapdos, Fori, Gengar, and then a Pursuitar, then it can help. Like if you bring in Fortress at a certain point, and then they get a Gengar to respond, and then you've got a Tyranitar with like a couple tons of Light Screen up, and then I mean, Pursuit Tyranitar should win that matchup anyway, but you just get a little more out of it. And it's it's not bad. It's not bad. It's not certainly not complaining. If I had that. Um, yeah, so that's sort of like another idea, just something I'd been experimenting with. Uh, yeah, so that's sort of how to use it in OU. Get those short amount of turns where you get a big long-term benefit. You remove a Pokemon, you protect a Pokemon, you get out spikes, or maybe even you clear spikes, but less uses of that. So if you're an OU fan, this is a perfect time to just hit like, hit subscribe, and then if you're interested, time to listen a little bit about ADV50. ADV50 is no trappers. Intentionally as part of the design of like making a fun balanced metagame with some different traits to OU. It's kind of like how OU has sand, this doesn't. It's not to say sand is broken or it's not, or you should have sand or whatever. It's just different, and I think that's cool. Just like playing metagames with like these different traits to them, and one of those traits in ADV50 is the lack of trappers. I mean, I like it for a whole lot of reasons, and the lack of trappers is like the reasons why I like lack of trappers is sort of like another video topic that I may sort of cover at some point, just on like how trapping impacts the game, how it changes the game, whether it's balanced or not. In a lot of cases, it isn't and gets banned on Smogon, rightly or wrongly. I don't really have super strong opinions, but in ADV50, there's no trapper, so it's like, well, how do you use light screen then? There's no trapping to support, so what you're left with is the spikers. There's only 2 spikers now in ADV50. Gladly you use it on offense, so just leaves you with Fortress, or potentially doing like the traditional approach of light screen plus offensive Pokemon like an SD Absol. But what I've experimented with, and I had some success. I mean, I've explored like all sorts of things in ADV50, so I'm not saying it's like an especially great idea, but it's certainly not a terrible one. Is a light screen user with Fortress, because so many Pokemon rely on special attacks. Pretty simple, and like they might be like Meganium that carries HP fire just to 2-hit KO Fori, like Lantern with his Hydro that just like 3-hit KOs. You can use Pokemon like I've tried it on Meganium and Clefable, since they can just about spare the move slot. Clefable a bit more easily than Meganium. I think Protect's a big deal on it. And you can protect Fortress from like special attacks and give it more opportunities to spike, to spin, to do whatever you want with it. And yeah, that's how I've been experimenting with it in ADV50. But I think the lack of trapping gives it a lot less potential in that tier than in OU, where not only is there a few setters, but there's also like these different abusers. Probably also the last thing I should touch on, we'll just go back to OU briefly, is the use of it in OU for the actual setter itself. And it's not completely trivial, but it shouldn't be the main reason you're using it, really. But with like Light Screen Rest Zapdos, you can sort of get away with Light Screen without Sleep Talk. Because, like, for example, you can set up a Light Screen on a Swampert, rest up, and its Ice Beam's doing 17%. And it's like, well, you can heal up in that way, but it does depend on the battle, and there's all sorts of things that can go wrong with that. It's not the most reliable thing in any way, shape, or form. Crits are a thing as well. But obviously, there can be some benefits, like light screening up for the Pokemon using the actual move itself rather than its teammates. It gives you a bit more chance to play with as well, but for the most part, it tends to be like pretty bulky Pokemon anyway that don't really need like extra special defense to do their job for the most part. So yeah, that's my video on how to use light screen in advanced, particularly advanced OU. I hope you enjoyed. Click that like, click that subscribe button. Don't have anything else to add other than what I'll put. Oh my goodness, I forgot to go through the teams. You know, I am such a dumbass. All right, so here's like an extra bit where I'm going to go through the teams. Is this the right window? This is the right window. Okay. I'm just going to like rattle through these quickly since I've just like stuck it at the end and told the ADV OU only folks to go and press the like button. I'll say F off, but no, press the like button instead. That's a lot better. Let me adjust this a little bit. There we go. Yeah. I don't know. I hope that's it. Hope nobody cares. I'm like not a massive professional YouTuber, am I? But yeah, here's one team that I made. It's an extremely standard lineup, like the T-Tar, Skarmbliss, Pertgar set up, but with a Foray over the Skarm and then a Zapdos, which helps with the fighters. And here provides Light Screen to support Fortress to a degree, to support the Pursuit-Tar, and also to support the Gengar. So there's a lot of supported Pokemon here. And it's just like Zapdos in general is a great Pokemon. So this is sort of like my take on like a very standard team. You can see how I'm applying Light Screen to get like multiple potential benefits throughout the game. A different team, an old team of mine that I'm pretty fond of still. Some people like it, I guess. I like it. I still use it, even though I built this back in like 2017. I've made some slight tweaks and I'll beat up on Dugtrio. To be honest, it's not changed much. But here, I've got the idea of Skarmory plus Dugtrio to trap Magneton. And also, Light Screen plus Doug helps trap Jirachis, trap Celebes. Yeah, that's how it goes. Again, it's not hard to fit Light Screen with like 2 to 3 Pokemon that appreciate it. So all of a sudden, it's not just this crappy niche move that could come in handy. It's like, oh, here's these material benefits for half of your team for carrying it. And a more recent team that I just, as of like today, some people saw me using it in a battle and wanted a copy of themselves. Here's one where I've used Celebi instead. There's no Gengar. The main beneficiary here really is Fortress. It could also help Pursuit-Tar, of course, as well. But it's mainly for Fortress. And yeah, it's just another showing you that it can fit on like these different structures, different spike structures, but that's kind of about it. But a bit more defensively inclined generally, although this one's got a bit more offense to it with the Moltres and the Carmine Jirachi. But still like these quite balanced teams, which I'd like to play more than the average bear. So yeah, there's some teams. I'll put links to these in the description. Now goodbye for real, like for realsies. See ya. Hit the like button.